A lot of times people say, oh, well, I just don't have it in me. I'm just not an outgoing person, or I just don't know. I don't have a business sense. I think all these skills can be learned. It's not just that certain people just happen to be successful and others aren't. There are tools and tactics that you can easily adapt into your life, really debunking this idea that some people just have it and others don't, because I don't think that's true at all. We have a choice. We are in full control of what we want to create and who we want to be.
Hey everybody, this is Chris from honestypill.com. You're listening to episode 4 of the Honesty Pill podcast. This season on the show, I'll be talking to innovative musician entrepreneurs who have created new ways of performing, new ways of teaching, and new ways of serving their audiences. My guest today is violinist and musicians coach Sarah Whitney. Sarah is a celebrated performer, teacher, and has been described as a musical maverick. She's also a founding member of the acclaimed string quintet Cerebite 5 and has toured all over the place. Praised by the Washington Post for her marvelous violin acrobatics, Sarah has also been busy outside the concert hall as the creator of an incredible resource for mindset, time management, and becoming the best version of yourself possible at The Productive Musician. In this episode, we talk about why, at a very early point in her career, Sarah took a chance on a job offer and moved all the way to New York City to help create a radically different type of chamber ensemble, despite the possibility of almost zero income. Oh, and spoiler alert, that chamber ensemble became the first string quintet to win the Concert Artists Guild competition, has performed at Carnegie Hall and Lincoln Center, and their last 2 albums have reached the top 10 on the Billboard Charts. So that worked out pretty well. We also talk about what it means to truly step out of your comfort zone and if passive income is actually a thing. And just in case you need another reason to listen, we even came up with a name for a brand new Girl Scout cookie, so do not miss this conversation. Oh, and one quick note to my friends listening on Apple devices. In about 8 seconds, I'm going to say the words, "Hey, Sarah," to introduce my guest. And if you have Siri enabled, she will chime in and shut off the podcast, which I discovered screening this episode in my car. So those of you listening with Siri, you may want to turn her off before you go any further. Okay, let's dig in. Hey, Sarah, great to have you on the show. Good to see you.
Chris, thanks so much for having me.
So the sort of point of this season of the Honesty Pill podcast is to talk about musician entrepreneurs and people who are changing up the way they're interacting with their audiences, with their students, with the way that they're presenting their art to the world. Because as you have noticed and everybody else has, especially during the pandemic, that previous models are broken. They're just not working anymore. So I want to jump into our call by talking about massive changes that people have been going through. And you're no exception. You just moved from the Big Apple, New York City, where you were living. How long were you living there, first of all?
It was almost 12 years.
And what was your main focus when you were living in New York? It was touring with Cerebite 5, right?
I moved to New York to play with Cerebite 5, essentially to build the ensemble up. And so that was the reason that I went to New York. I ended up doing a lot of other things while I was there, but that's what got me to the city.
Did you go to school in New York?
I did not. I went to school in the Midwest. I went to CIM and University of Michigan.
Now, so I'm a trumpet player, right? So most of us do not go to school with becoming a professional chamber musician in mind. Most of us are orchestrally bound or maybe music education. But I know a lot of string players think the opposite, where you all think you're going to become the next Jascha Heifetz, right? Or a soloist or chamber musicians of some kind. Was that always a path for you to become a chamber musician? Or tell me about that.
Actually, it wasn't. Honestly, when I was at school in my undergrad in Michigan, I really thought I was going to be in an orchestra. And that was sort of just a result of me just assuming that's what all violinists did. And I didn't really know another path was possible. So I very much sort of went through my undergrad thinking that's what I was going to do. And when I got to my master's, I took a few orchestra auditions and was sort of still in that zone. But there was a point during grad school that I had this like epiphany, really, when I realized that I didn't want to be in an orchestra. It was like this moment at Music Academy of the West. I remember it so specifically. I was sitting on like the first violin section inside chair, and it was like another rehearsal. Like we had orchestra rehearsals every day. We played concerts every weekend. And I just remember realizing that I didn't want to do this all the time. I didn't want it to be my job. So that was really great. Like I was like, great, I know I don't want to be in orchestra, but that also left me with the question of, well, then what do I want to do? So that was halfway through grad school. And having that realization was was great. But like I said, I was sort of left with a big question mark. And then but I always did love chamber music. I can't say that I always thought that's what I would do. It really sort of happened organically. And I met Sybarite Five, my quintet at Aspen one summer. And eventually I moved to New York to help build up the group. And when I got that phone call, it made perfect sense. Like I was at this point of like, I didn't know where I was going to go after I finished school that year. They called me and said, "Hey, like, we know you're finishing school." I had met them in Aspen. Things went really well. They said, "We want to turn this into a professional ensemble. Do you want to move to New York and spend all your time building up something that won't make you any money at the beginning?" And I said, "Yeah, sounds great." But so yeah, that's my story in a nutshell. But it really it made so much sense when I pursued that path. And being a chamber musician, I mean, it is amazing. It's been really amazing.
I want to ask you about why chamber music in a second, but I think it's worth highlighting the fact that musicians will always jump at an opportunity, even if it comes with the caveat, "Oh, by the way, this doesn't pay anything." Can you imagine so many other industries like, "Hey, you could become a plumber. It doesn't actually pay anything, but wouldn't that be fun?" Nobody would say yes to that, but musicians always jump. And I think that's actually worth noting, that this is where our lack and mindset problems start, is when we feel so validated by being asked to join a group or move to New York. By the way, one of the most expensive cities in the world. And also you're going to make no money. But that's another topic for another day, perhaps. Why did chamber music resonate with you so much? Why is that something that drew you in, and why does it give you so much satisfaction?
Well, I think in thinking back to that moment when I realized I didn't want to do orchestra, one of the reasons that I didn't want to do that is I didn't actually want to be in a section and sort of essentially be told what to do. And so being in a chamber group, I have my own voice as the only person on my part. And so I think that was really appealing to me in that way. I never wanted to be a soloist. That was never really in my like sphere or in my mind, I guess. So I think chamber music was great because I knew I had a lot of artistic say. I could give a lot of artistic input. I was involved in the repertoire choices. So I think that's one of the reasons why it was so appealing to me.
What's it like to be in a relationship with a small group, like a chamber group? Is it like a marriage? Is it like a job? Is it like having office workers? What's that relationship like? And how long, you're still with Sybarite Five, right? But you guys
Yeah.
aren't touring
Oh
as
yeah.
much now. But what was it like in the beginning was it brand new and exciting and everybody got along all the time and you were all having dinner together every night? I don't know if you've seen the movie with Christopher Walken. I cannot remember the name of it right now, but he is a cellist in a chamber group in the string quartet. And
Oh yes, I have. And like it's funny watching them play because they all look
well,
like the
that
technique is all messed up.
exactly. I mean, it's clearly, by the way, if you haven't seen this movie, I'll try to remember the name of it, but Christopher Walken playing the cello. But what's actually really funny about it, and mostly for musicians who watch this, is these people who are in this, like the Juilliard String Quartet or something similar. They are hanging out at each other's houses all the time. They're all laughing and yucking it up. And it seems like it's just a big party and there's no actual work going on. When we know that that's not exactly what happens. So what was that like for you?
When I first joined the group, I mean, we're all still extremely close. I mean, you ask what the relationship is like. I joke that I'm either married to four other people or they're all my siblings. It's like it goes back and forth between that. But I use that analogy a lot because it is very much like this. I mean, I know these people better than like almost anyone else. I've spent time traveling the world with them. The amount of hours I've spent with these people is incredible. But yeah, at the beginning, it was so much fun. We were all really, really social. And so when we traveled, we'd explore, we'd go party, we'd just have a great, great time. And yeah, it was a blast. And it still is, but it's just different now. We're older and our lives are different. But yeah, I mean, these people are so incredible and such a significant part of my life.
I think the film was called A Late Quartet, by the way, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Is that it? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Highly recommended entertainment for our musician friends listening. You should definitely go check it out. All right, so you guys are working in New York. You're touring. How much time were you spending on the road?
At our busiest, I mean, we were on the road about 30 to 40% of the year. We've played in 43 states. Yeah, a lot of travel. It was a ton of travel. Obviously, that's different now. But yeah, we played all over.
So in a way, you were in control of your income, in control of who you worked with, when you worked with them, how you worked with them. You did have your own voice, but in another way, there's a little bit of a rat race sort of a vibe with a touring group as well, because you are working with presenters and you're dealing with their schedules. And there is the obvious inherent challenge of just the travel, where you're in a van or on a plane or on a train for a lot of that time, which is fun for a while. And I'm sure it was great for you too. But after a while, that also can become work, and there has to be some balance there. I know this is a topic you've talked about a bunch and with me in the past and other places too, but let's talk about that sort of brick wall that you hit with getting injured and how that impacted your ability to do the thing that you thought you were going to be doing.
Yeah, I had a pretty bad injury, a very bad injury, I guess I should say, about 9 years ago. And this was when Sybarite was very much in our infancy stages. We'd actually just won the Concert Artist Guild competition. So it was right at the point where we were like really kind of catapulted into the professional world, touring, manager, the whole thing. Yeah, I had an overuse injury on both of my hands, actually. Full disclosure, I was arranging a song for Sybarite. I was arranging a Red Hot Chili Peppers song. Any fans here? Yeah, Chris,
Absolutely.
you know.
Oh, yeah.
I was arranging Under the Bridge on the computer and really just overdid it and injured both my thumb joints pretty severely. And yeah, when I got injured, it was a huge blow to me, honestly. I really lost all my confidence as a player. I developed tons of performance anxiety, lots of uncertainty about my future. I really kind of lost the ability to see like the possibility of what it would be like to be a professional violinist. Like all of those exciting dreams that I had sort of felt like they weren't possible anymore, or I didn't know if they were possible anymore. And it was just this big question mark. And it was honestly, it was a really dark time for me. I think also my quintet had just come in the spotlight. We just won Concert Artist Guild. We were sort of like the group, like the next hot group on the scene. And I was supposed to be killing it, living my dream, with this new group. And inside I was sort of crumbling. So I sort of was living a double life too, trying to maintain like that everything was fine, that we were just like gonna catapult into success, while personally I was really, really struggling. Coming out of that, I mean, the journey I made coming out of that was really actually quite extraordinary. And what I realized was there was a physical part of the injury for sure. I went to physical therapists, I saw different doctors. There was an element of physical recovery that needed to happen. But it took me a really long time to realize that there was another part of the injury I was ignoring, and that was the mental part. That was really kind of the trauma I had gone through of all the anxiety of the questioning my career and my, what I've been studying my whole entire life. And I think until I addressed that, I actually couldn't recover fully. I was able to progress in the physical side a little bit, but all the mental blocks, just the anxiety I had, just this like defeated kind of like nothing's going to work again feeling really hindered my progress. And so, yeah, I first started working with a psychologist actually, who just like forced me to think about things in a different way, and ended up working with a musician's coach who absolutely changed my life. And she helped me really shift my mindset around what was happening. And I had held onto this story that this injury had happened to me at the worst possible time, right? Like right when my quintet was supposed to be catapulting into this new part of our career, like I got injured. So I was so resentful. I was angry. Like, why did this happen to me now? I'm supposed to be enjoying this. I hung on to so much of that. And she really helped me let go of that and sort of reframe and start to understand challenges in a different way. And she helped build my confidence back up as a player in order so I could start to see possibility with what I could be and do as a violinist. I started to, what else did I do? We did so many things. I mean, essentially, like I made like a 180 through my work with the musician's coach, and really built myself back up. But also what was so amazing about that experience is it not only helped me as a violinist, but also like in every single area of my life. It gave me confidence to tackle problems in new ways. It gave me confidence to take more risks. It helped me have a different relationship with failure and challenge. And like, that's something that we all encounter, that we will continue to encounter no matter what anybody says to you. So it's really changed my relationship with that, and essentially, allowed me to be happier, more fulfilled, and sort of changed my relationship with so many parts of my career and just myself, honestly.
Yeah, it's so awesome, Sarah. So I'm going to give you a math problem. What
Bring it on.
what percentage would you say in your experience now looking backwards, what percentage of the real work is learning to play the violin versus the mindset work that goes into supporting
Mm.
that? What would you say if you were to put a number on it?
Oh, Chris, I love this question. If I was to put a number on it,
Is it 50-50? Is it like 90-10? What would you say?
gosh, I think, to be completely honest, I would say it's more like 50-50. And the reason I say that is because, we think about as musicians, we spend so many hours in the practice room. We're highly skilled, um, trained, we practice. But if you're not in a mindset to get your best work done, it does not matter how many hours you've practiced. It really doesn't. Because what will happen is you will be too fearful to put yourself out there. You will have you want to have confidence in yourself to want to take those opportunities or make those, like, reach out to collaborators or start your own projects or take risks with putting yourself out there in a new way. And also just even the enjoyment of playing, like, if we aren't in a good mindset to really see our talents, if we're constantly being so critical of ourselves, and I work with a lot of musicians who are so critical of themselves that performing is actually really miserable, and they're great players, but they're so critical that they can't enjoy what they're doing on stage. They can't enjoy what they're creating. So I think that it's such, what's the word I'm looking for? It's just very underrated how powerful the mindset piece is. And I'm a firm believer that it really can make or break. I mean, it will make or break your success. It will make or break what you're capable of doing. And like I said, like, you can, be the best player in the world, but if you're too scared to put yourself out there, no one's going to know about you. Like, it's just, or if you're too scared, if you have a dream to launch a concert series or do a really neat collaboration, and you don't have the confidence, or you're too critical of, like, you're too fearful of doing it wrong or all these things, it's never going to happen. So, I think if we talk about true fulfillment and true kind of satisfaction in our lives and our careers, the mindset piece is what's going to get us there, not the hours we spend in the practice room.
Yet, what percentage of time do people study mindset when they're at conservatory? Or here's another math problem for you, okay? Sarah, the violinist, goes to Juilliard. She spends 100% of her time in the practice room and 0% of the time on self-care. How many years will she have to work in a coffee shop before she's a successful musician?
Wait, that's a tough one.
But
I should take notes.
it literally comes down to the focus for so many of us is so singular. And I think that's not necessarily a bad thing for certain parts of our career. You do need to learn how to play with a beautiful sound. You do need to learn all that stuff. But, and this is my whole point of running my coaching practice in this podcast, is to highlight the fact that all of those skills need to come with balance. And then when you're balanced, you can actually realize, wow, I can apply this to anything. It doesn't just have to be being an amazing violinist or just doing that one thing that I thought I was trained up to do. So it's important. And the reason I kind of brought this topic up is I want to just jump all the way ahead to Sarah Whitney, the coach, and talk a little bit about your program, the Career Reboot for Musicians, because this is literally the type of thing that hypothetical person that I mentioned who's not spending any attention on what is it that I'm actually trying to do here and how am I going to do it and how can I morph it and flip it and change it and evolve it with the times that we're living in. And by the way, I don't mean pandemic times, even though that is obviously a huge challenge. I just mean in general. It's not like orchestras were doing great or chamber music was, I mean, you said so yourself. You were offered a great position in a chamber group in New York City with the caveat, oh, by the way, you're not going to make any money. That is something that needs to be rebooted. And I'm curious how your program helps musicians sort of, find that missing piece.
Yeah, so the Career Reboot program is really designed to help musicians create more ease and excitement and really rediscover the joy in being a musician. And what the program does is really, it's a combination of mindset skills and business skills. So I think what I've found is they really go hand in hand. And let's be real, like, we all have things that get in the way of our success, whether it's, being too scared to put ourselves out there, not feeling like we have the tools to make the project happen, or maybe like fear of judgment from others. So part of this program, what we do is we sort of make an assessment of where you are and where you want to be. and then figure out what's getting in the way. And a huge part of this is really getting rid of those blocks, equipping musicians with tools to tackle the perfectionism that so many of us deal with. Tackle what do you do when you're scared of what other people think that prevents you from putting things out there? Procrastination, different ways that we have things that get in the way. And essentially, the program is designed to help you unlock the doors so that you can see more possibility with what is possible and then equip you with the tools that you need. So the business tools, learning about how to market yourself in a way that is strategic. Also, how to make money doing what you want to do. How can you structure a project in a way so that you can get income? How do you get comfortable selling something? How do you get comfortable negotiating something? How do you sort of get empowered around this idea that you can create something you want and then make money doing it? So that's what the program's designed to do. And it's been really, really amazing. And I think that, I firmly believe that the pieces need to go together because just like practicing and if you need to be a master at your instrument, it goes without saying, just like practicing in the practice room. I also believe you can have all the business skills in the world. You can read all the business books and learn about Instagram strategies and Facebook algorithms. But if you're not in the right mindset to do the work and actually make the progress forward, it doesn't matter how many skills you have. You really have to kind of marry the two in order to actually get the results.
So I had 6 years of college. I did a double major for undergrad and then a master's for 2 years. I never heard a word about anything that we're talking about right now. No one ever mentioned the word mindset to me. No one mentioned the idea of even putting together a chamber music series or a program, let alone a program to help someone else accomplish a goal. Even though I had all the tools to create a plan to achieve a goal, whether it be my, senior recital or taking that audition, no one ever actually sat down and said, there are some tried and true tools that you can apply for this. What about you? Did you have anybody in your life that was influential that said, hey, you know what? You might want to start thinking about becoming an advocate, or, hey, I know you're a musician, but you actually need to be able to communicate with people why they should listen to you. I mean, technically, if you're a creative person, you are in sales. I hate to say it, but
Right.
If you don't, some people are going to come and find you and buy your thing and engage with you and want to be a part of it. But most people don't even know it exists.
Well, one thing I say to my clients, I say, you are for sale. Essentially, if you are doing something, playing your violin or teaching or coaching or, selling, creating projects, and someone's paying you money, you are for sale. And I think in the basic terms, yeah, I didn't have any training in sales or business in school, really. I'm trying to think, no formal training. And honestly, I sort of crashed through it in some ways, being out in the real world. And I think through Sybarite, actually, I learned tons and tons of business skills. The bass player in the group, he had a very good sort of business mindset that he just sort of had and was really good at looking things like a business. And I'm not going to lie, at first I was very hesitant because I was like, well, why should we, we just want to play music. We just want to, play concerts. But so he was very adamant in sort of structuring the group in that way. And I learned so much through that, and also just sort of being out there and doing it. And with Sybarite also, we did a lot of things differently. We are not a traditional chamber group by any means, in the sense that we're not, we did a lot of commissions, we did a lot of really unique projects, even down to how we brand ourselves, how we market ourselves. We're more like a band than we are like a classical chamber group. So I learned very early on a lot about branding and the consistency of your marketing materials and how important that is. And also just, I think, even in the negotiating piece, there was a time where we didn't have a manager and we were sort of more involved in the contracts and just really kind of being in it, really just kind of being messy with it, being in it and learning about it. Now I have my own concert series. I've done that for 6 years, learned a lot about fundraising, audience building, marketing in that way. So I think, since I've taken business courses and actually got more formal training, but that's only, that is a more recent thing, a part of my life. But just learning kind of on the job, if you will, man, I wish someone had told me those things a little sooner. I mean, I did all right. I did pretty well, but, it would have been great to have formal training. I think, if you're a musician and you're a freelancer, you are running your own business. That's it. That's just the definition of what you're doing. So I think one thing that I really stand for is people sort of treating their careers as a business in that sense. I think sometimes we forget that we are actually a business by definition, and just sort of all the elements of a business, the financing, the accounting, the budgeting, the all these things like come into play, and we need to be equipped to do them.
Awesome. That's so great. And by the way, I think it's pretty clear to anyone listening that Sybarite 5 is not a traditional group if you're doing like Red Hot Chili Pepper covers. So I need to hear that, by the way. Is that out there on YouTube somewhere?
No, honestly, it was an arrangement that I started. And when I got injured, I never finished it. But we've got some Aha covers. We've got lots of Radiohead covers. We've got other stuff to, similar. I mean, it's not really Red Hot Chili Pepper, but
That's fantastic. So I want to shift gears and talk to you about a massive change in your life that you recently made is leaving New York City. And the reason I'm curious about it is there's a lot of perception and limiting assumptions about what we think others think about us as artists. And this goes out to all of you who are really, really good at teaching a specific topic. Like perhaps you're really good at explaining a certain technique to high school students, or maybe you're really good at body use or injury prevention, or maybe you're like excellent at audition strategy, yet you don't have a big job or a fancy title. And the first thing that we think of is, why should anyone listen to me? Was it difficult for you to leave New York City? Did you think that, people aren't going to take me seriously as an artist, or I'm in the middle of this big scene and now I'm leaving? Am I giving up? Am I quitting? Because I think that's a really common theme that limits us for doing what's really best for us and maybe even best for our careers.
Absolutely. I think this is a very timely conversation for me, obviously, but such an important one. And I'll be totally honest, it was a very difficult decision for me to make. I think I was in New York for just about 12 years. And for many years, it served me very, very well. But I think at a certain point, I really wanted a different lifestyle. And I think I was a touring musician. I was used to the New York City grind. And, there are people that thrive in New York City and that it's totally the place for them. And I think that's amazing. But I started to realize that I was it wasn't really fitting into as I got older, as I got clearer on my priorities and what I really wanted. And actually, as I got more familiar with the concept that I could create what I wanted and that I could actually create the life that I wanted, I started to realize that New York didn't fit into that. And I actually sort of had a very poignant moment. I think about a year and a half ago, I had just come off a really busy touring season with the quintet, grueling touring schedule. It was really wild. And I sort of had this realization of looking at my life, my career, and I was tired. I mean, I was exhausted. We've done very well in Sybarite, but I started really thinking about the future in a way that I hadn't, because I was sort of fresh off the road, really feeling drained. We were making money doing these concerts, but I really felt for what I wanted in my life, the combination of the grueling travel, the schedule, all of those things, and also the income goals that I had based on the lifestyle I wanted to live, what I wanted for my future, my family, kids, all that stuff in the future. It wasn't aligning. And I think I had spent many years sort of going along with things and sort of saying, well, I have to take what I can get, or I have to do things a certain way because this is the way musicians do it. And also being a musician in New York is something that a lot of people regard highly. It's a hard place to make it. And I had done very well, absolutely grateful for my time there, but I really had to get clear on what I wanted. And it actually wasn't being a musician in New York City anymore, despite all the pressures that I felt, whether I made them up or not. And I probably made most of them up as far as worrying about judgment from others. But yeah, it was really, really hard. But I think what really grounded me was that moment when I realized after that tour that I wanted to shift my lifestyle. That's really when I started my coaching business in a very formal way and started seeing the possibility of what I could make income wise, what my lifestyle could look like, what my schedule could look like. I'm talking how about taking evenings off? How about taking days off? How about taking a week off? Things that I hadn't necessarily given myself permission to do. And as I realized how I wanted my life to be, New York didn't really fit in. Yeah, did I answer your question?
You did, and talking about if I can make it there, I can make it anywhere. I think that's a song lyric, Sarah. It's out there. I'm going to look that one up.
I think it is. Yeah, somewhere.
So you've been doing this for a while. You've been performing. You've been coaching. You've been teaching. You've been running programs. You've been connecting people who need those programs with you. What's gotten easier for you over time?
God, that's a great question. There's a couple things I could say. I think one thing that has gotten easier for me is really listening and trusting myself more. And that's a big thing. But when I say really being able to listen to what I want and need, what are my desires? Like, what do I want my life to look like? What do I want my income goal to look like? And really listening to that and knowing that I can make it happen. That has gotten easier. Making it happen is still, it's a challenge. But I think I have realized how much power I have and how much control I have over my life. And I guess, so I think that muscle, if you will, of listening to that and trusting it more informs my decisions. So I think something that I just had to get used to, and it's about trust. It's also about permission. It's about giving myself permission to do what I want and not necessarily what I think everyone else wants me to do or what other people want me to do. So that's gotten easier. And I think, and honestly, like more on a tactile level, just my lifestyle has gotten easier. I am in control of my schedule now. I am much more in control of what I do and how I do it. And I think that's been really empowering and given me a lot of freedom.
So on the tail end of that comment, and I already know the answer for me, what's still hard for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I'll be totally honest. One thing that I struggle with is the sometimes keeping the bigger vision in sight. And I say that in the sense of like really making sure I dream big enough. I mean, and that also translates to what I do in my business, how I grow, what kind of clients I'm seeking out, what kind of collaborations I reach out to. As humans, we are all very comfortable in our comfort zone. And I think something that I've been thinking about a lot recently is how, especially achievers, actually, like high achievers can get in this space where they're sort of in between, like, oh, I'm not like totally sucking at this thing, right? Like, no. I'm not like being lazy or just dropping the ball left and right, but I'm also not actually making those big asks or really putting myself out there and like, really getting out of my comfort zone. I think, and I've been thinking about that a lot because as high achievers, like we can be so used to getting things done, to being accomplished and doing things, but we still are going to, resist that getting out of our comfort zone. And so I think, it's something I have to constantly remind myself of. And it does come down to sort of trusting. I already said that, it does come down to trusting and knowing like what I have to offer is valuable to people. And also knowing that the more I get out of my comfort zone, I will never tell, like, I don't think getting out of my comfort zone is ever going to become like easy, but it is sort of that, and I feel like that's a myth that people have that like, you'll finally be ready to do something. No, you'll never be ready. You're just going to like, you do the thing when you're like, okay, I'm almost ready. And then you just do it and you jump off the cliff. And you have a really great analogy for that. What do you get the helicopter and you put the wings on it as you, what is it?
Mine is leap and build the helicopter on the way down.
Yes. But I think the more you do it, you get used to it. And like I said, it's not going to become easier, but I've started to realize that if something is too easy, then I know I'm not at my full potential. It's sort of like a barometer for that. And I can sense if I'm really staying in my comfort zone and doing the things that like I know I can succeed at, like I know I can get that client or I know I can like pull that off. But I want to play a bigger game. So I'm getting better at doing that.
By the way, I should just clarify that my idea of leaping, I also suggest having a manual and a really good toolbox and also knowing how to use those tools because you can leap and crash or you can leap with some guidance and then actually figure out how to create something. So yes, leap and build a helicopter, but maybe read a few books about helicopter builds before you do that.
Well, I think, yeah. And I mean, asking for help, essentially, being willing to recognize where your weaknesses are, where your strengths are, and figure out where you can get help or get resources to help you have what you need in order to take the leap. Yes, but, take it in an informed way.
Right. And so many people will sit there at the precipice of taking a chance on something new, preparing, and then never actually take action. And I think that's pretty common and probably more common than someone crashing is just they never actually lift off. I want to quickly ask you a question about this idea of passive income. Since you and I are both working in this space of creating programs and creating offers and creating ways of helping people, and I think there's a misconception out there that if you build it, they will come sort of a thing. And What's one of the biggest myths about running your own business that you would like to debunk, that you found to be, you thought this was true in the beginning, or this, you didn't think this was going to be the hardest, but now it turns out to be the opposite of what you thought?
God, there's so many things I could say here, but I'm trying to I love what you said, this idea that, yeah, like the perfectionism thing and I also sort of alluded at that with the comfort zone thing. Like you're never totally going to be ready. Like it is sort of a jump out there and then figure it out. Be willing to be messy with it. And if you ask people if they have it figured out, nobody has it figured out. You're not even like the biggest entrepreneurs, nobody has it figured out. Everyone sort of like tried a bunch of things. But actually, I'm gonna add something. And it's like, because we sort of covered that, something else that I think about is when we are getting hired to do something, put it like services, coaching, teaching, playing our instruments, whatever it is. I think owning our value and understanding that sales doesn't have to be creepy. And this is something that I work with clients on all the time. From my experience and from people I work with, even my own experience as a musician, and even what you said at the beginning of the conversation when I said, I'm going to move to New York City to play for like not make any money. We're sort of programmed to believe, and this is also our culture, we're programmed to believe that because we do something we love, we shouldn't want to get paid for it. And I think that this is a really important conversation. We have to understand that we have value with what we have to offer, whether it's performing. We are bringing people an experience, a unique experience. We are changing people's lives through music. We are giving people an outlet. We are bringing people together, right? We're developing community. There's such an important place for this in our world, or teaching, right? Whether you're mentoring a child to learn their instrument, you're also building their confidence. You are helping them be a problem solver. I mean, there's so much value that we have to offer, and just really owning that. And I think one thing that I just was talking to a client about this the other day, especially even when it comes to pricing, we get so scared to say numbers and say, well, my hourly rate is this, oh my God, but I think we have to think about ourselves as when we are coming up with pricing, or when we are selling ourselves or asking someone to pay us for something, they are getting every single one of our experiences we've ever had. That's every single lesson we've taken. That's every single class we've taken. That's every single performance we've had, all the good, all the bad. It's every single online course that we've done. It's every book we've read, every podcast we've studied. I mean, we have so much value. And I think the selling thing gets such a bad rap. And what I always centers me is that I'm coming from a place of service. I truly want to help people. And I know I can help people in a really, really significant way. And I know that's really valuable.
It's a value exchange.
Yes.
It's not, that's exactly what it is. It's a value exchange, and it benefits both people. So speaking of leading with service, you moved from New York City, you're living in Massachusetts now in a completely different environment. Tell me about Beyond the Notes, Autumn Minis. And I just want to say really quickly that Autumn Minis sounds like a Girl Scout cookie. I think you should totally work on some sort of a deal with them. And I also want to know about looping pedals. Tell me about all that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, Autumn Minis, that's a great idea. If I turn that into a cookie, I'll give you 5% commission. Does that work?
Sounds fine.
Cool.
Done.
Great. Yeah. So, Beyond the Notes is a concert series that I started in Concord, my hometown, 6 years ago. And pre-COVID, it still is. It still is. It's morphed a little bit, and I'll tell you how it's changed. But it's an interactive concert series that really gives the audience a chance to get to know the performers beyond what can be read in their bio. And so I basically started Beyond the Notes as a project that I just wanted to bring different experiences to audiences, bring more unique experiences to audiences. But pre-COVID, basically, I did put on huge events in Concord, and I would bring in different guest artists every year. Last year, I had Mike Block and Sandeep Das, who are in the Silk Road Ensemble and Grammy Award winners, and it's been really incredible. But during the concert, the audience has a chance to submit a question, which is then answered live on stage throughout the second half of the concert. And I wanted to create a way to have the audience involved more, because I think it really changes the way you listen if you are actually involved in the concert experience. And since COVID happened, the big concerts are obviously not happening. But what I did is I developed a mini series called Beyond the Notes Minis. It started as Beyond the Notes Summer Minis and now has morphed into Beyond the Notes Autumn Minis. And it's a little bit different than, it's actually quite a bit different than what I was doing before, but The mission of these concerts is to provide COVID-friendly live music for audiences during this time, raise awareness around social justice and the racial injustices happening in our world, and highlight the works of Black composers. And what I've done is I do mini concerts. I do 30-minute shows, basically multiple times throughout the day, because the audience capacity I have is only about 10 to 12 people. And I've been hosting them in an outdoor venue. It's been really amazing. It's basically, I wanted to create a sense of community during COVID when everyone has been so starved of that. And it's all socially distanced. 25% of the proceeds are donated to an organization, supports social justice, and a different organization is chosen every set of concerts. And this weekend, I have a set of concerts coming up. It's 2 days. I'm doing 8 shows. And it's been really, really amazing. Yeah, it's been an incredible experience to sort of to exercise my voice in a way that I haven't actually before, when I've been very vocal about supporting the racial injustices and the social justice and all the conversations that we are having right now. And you mentioned the loop pedal. So basically the shows have been basically just me as a solo violinist, but I've been using my loop pedal, which essentially is a device that allows me to record myself and then layer different phrases over one another, essentially turning myself into a band. So I've been doing a lot of arrangements for violin and loop pedal. What did I do recently? I did Stand By Me recently. I did Libertango. Coming up this weekend, I'm doing a John Lennon piece to celebrate his birthday. It's been really great. It's like programming is really eclectic. I also do jazz tunes. I do standard classical stuff too, but not with the loop pedal. That stuff lives in the solo violin world as it should. So that's my series.
That's fantastic. So I just want to point out, if you are a musician who has lost your opportunity to perform, your concert hall is dark, your group is disbanded, there are still ways you can actually serve your community, create community, and put something out there that is not only satisfying to you and the people who are listening to you, but something brand new. And I joked about, the looping pedal is a big deal, but in reality, that is a tool that exists that can create a whole new situation for a single individual musician to connect with people. And I've watched your YouTube videos. They're fantastic. They're totally awesome.
Thank you.
In fact, I now have a looping pedal right here.
Yes.
I'll show
Trumpet
you.
and loop pedal? That's going to be a thing, Chris.
There you go.
Nice.
It's
amazing.
It's an RC3 loop station, and I have no idea how to use it, so I'll be calling you up for lessons on that.
I'll give you a lesson. Yes.
It's so fantastic, Sarah. So where can listeners connect with you online?
Absolutely. You can find me a couple different places. You can find me on Instagram at The Productive Musician. You can also find me on Facebook, Sarah Whitney, The Productive Musician, and my website, sarahwhitney.com. I also have a blog called The Productive Musician where I write about a lot of these fun things we've talked about today, as well as a lot of other things. And in true productivity fashion, everything is under 350 words for a quick read. And you can find that at theproductivemusician.com. Also, you can find it on my website. And I also have a free guide that I just put out. It's called 4 Secrets to Being Super Successful That You Didn't Learn in Music School. One of my favorite conversations is talk about success. And a lot of times people say, oh, well, I just don't have it in me. I'm just not an outgoing person, or I just don't know. I don't have a business sense. I think all these skills can be learned. It's not just that certain people just happen to be successful and others aren't. There are tools and tactics that you can easily adapt into your life, really debunking this idea that some people just have it and others don't, because I don't think that's true at all. We have a choice. We are in full control of what we want to create and who we want to be.
Awesome. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me. You are completely living up to your title as musical maverick. And people who are listening, Sarah's going to be taking requests for her next pop tunes for her next autumn minis. So you can email those right to her, and let me know when those Girl Scout cookies are ready, and I'll order a few boxes for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll put your picture on the front of the box. That sound good?
Sounds perfect. Thanks again for joining me, Sarah. We'll see you soon.
Thanks so much, Chris.
Big thanks to Sarah Whitney for joining us today. And while you can absolutely not order Girl Scout cookies on her website, you can get Sarah's completely awesome and totally free guide, 4 Secrets to Being Super Successful That Music School Didn't Teach You, by clicking the links in the show notes, as well as finding info on all of Sarah's programs for musicians, social media, and read her blog, The Productive Musician. By the way, before I sign off today, I hope these interviews are starting to get you thinking about where you are at in your career right now, what your performance schedule looks like, how your teaching methods or studio has changed, and what your bank account looks like. Whether you're sitting in a full-time orchestra job, you're a freelance musician, or a music educator, there are so many opportunities available to you right now, even during this global pandemic, if you're willing to open your mind to possibility, if you can be honest with your limiting assumptions, and if you're willing to try something new. I don't think it's a secret by now that I'm spending the majority of my time at Honesty Pill talking to musicians about how they can turn the skills developed in 10,000 hours in a practice room into wildly successful and fulfilling online businesses. If you have ideas, questions, or just want to talk about where you're at in your musical life right now, you at least owe yourself a conversation. And if you already have an idea for a business, then I really want to talk to you. Shoot me an email at chris@honestypill.com and let's connect. Okay, that's it for me today. This has been the Honesty Pill Podcast, Episode 4. You can find out more at honestypill.com. Check out the free resource library. Lots of good stuff over there. Thank you for listening. See you next time.